All right, we're going to do a call out this week. We took a look at Caitlin Clark was left off of the U.S. women's Olympic team, the basketball Olympic team. And for whatever reason, this created quite an uproar. Now, I don't know that many people before this happened, the announcement was made, or it was a leak initially, where it was expecting that she was going to be a part of the Olympic team. So it was interesting that the idea that she didn't make the team became such a big story when it didn't. Beforehand, you didn't see a bunch written about it saying here's what she's going to do on the team or anything like that. And in fact, the last Olympic team practice back in April, or I think it was, she wasn't at that practice either. Like, so but this Caitlin Clark, for whatever reason, gets people fired up. So what was your thought on her being left off the Olympic team? And then we can also talk about the potential motivations for leaving her off or to putting her on. But I think we should start off just kind of noting that if the Olympic team is 12 or 15 people, I don't think that there's been much compelling argument that she should have been among the 12 or 15 of the best players that should have been there. The more so, it's like, oh, well, she's very popular or things like that. And so it could drive interest. But what was your thought on the her not making the team and also just kind of the reaction to it?
The thought of her not making the team, I would say I'm neutral on it because I would say, like you said, if there's 12 to 15 of the top players in the WNBA and the USA basketball coaching staff and their scouts and all that have made a decision on who those best players are, who am I to question that? So that's my initial answer. However, I totally recognize that she is the most popular basketball player at this point in the WNBA. And she hasn't even played a full season yet. And she's a great player. So I'm not going to take away from her skill. To me, it's less about, just can we compare her to the other players that made it? And is she better or worse and all that?
But I would say objectively, the case, there's been no case made that she was better than the players that were left off. In fact, there are players that were left off that are better than her. Like the second leading scorer in the WNBA was left off. The leader in steals was left off. Like the women's professional basketball is very competitive, and they're because there aren't that many teams in the WNBA, but there's a lot of high level talent. Essentially, it's not uncommon in this situation for there to be controversy over who's left off. But I think the case hasn't been. I mean, and I'll get your thoughts on this in a second. But the case hasn't been that hey, she's one of the best 12. Because her numbers don't bear that out. Her impact on winning as far as her own team don't bear that out. But I think there is an interesting case that could be made that, hey, if you want to drive interest in your sport, then maybe you should have this person on the team. And the thing that reminded me of was if you go back to the Dream Team, 1992, the first time they had NBA players in the Olympics, and they had, this was the best of the best in many respects. Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and Charles Barkley. Most notably, they did leave off Isaiah Thomas, who was clearly one of the best players at that time, but that was a personality issue, allegedly. But another person that made that team was a guy who hadn't even played in the NBA yet, named Christian Laettner, who was a very popular college player. Who never became an NBA star, wasn't considered to be one of the best 12 players in the world as far as men's basketball, but he was a guy that was liked by a lot of part of American culture and was a part of very famous Duke teams and so forth. And so they put him on the team. And there were people that were upset about that. There were people that were like, oh, well, it's about growing the game and the greater good. Who cares about the 12th man spot or anything like that? So it reminds me, like the people who are clamoring for her to be on this team, it reminds me of that and say, hey, let's do this as a gesture of goodwill, to get more people to watch, so to speak. I think that overlooks the fact that if they put her on the team, she might not play, which would seem to be counterproductive on that. So, but I mean, do you remember that from '92 with the Dream Team?
Yeah.
And it was Christian Laettner over Shaquille O'Neal or over whoever else. Do you see the analogy?
Look, we could sit here if we want to go back in a time machine and argue, was Chris Mullin one of the best players? I mean, he was a great player, could James Worthy have been a better forward to put on that team, or Kevin McHale? I mean, so one can argue some of these spots no matter what. Whether there was the rookie or someone. I mean, I don't mean to pick on Chris Mullin, but just the idea that we can all argue were these guys at the Dream Team, all of them, take away Michael and Larry.
Yeah, obviously the top 5 or 6, there's no question.
That's what I mean. Take away those top guys. The rest, could you argue that Scottie Pippen in 1992 was one of the best forwards? I mean, like I said, James Worthy might have had a better track record at that point. And I'm not hating on Scottie Pippen. It's just this is the beauty of sports. A lot of it is up to opinion once you get off the guys that have the numbers that you just can't dispute type of thing. And I think with Caitlin Clark, she hasn't been there long enough for us to be able to dispute her numbers or not. And I do think that, so off this where we started on just me and you being kind of basketball commentators, and more of what I see is Caitlin Clark has become an avatar like many others in our society who are famous of how people feel about other stuff.
Yeah,
so I'm thinking
and
about
other people as well. How they
correct.
feel about
so like
people.
when Taylor Swift was being used as a conspiracy theory in the Super Bowl stuff, I mean, why people? Taylor Swift sings music and a pop star. How she became involved in a political conspiracy theory, I don't understand. But again, people want to project how they feel about other
vote.
It's
like,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, that's the great
people
sin of that.
Yeah, people project their feelings, their insecurities, all that onto some of these celebrities. So I think what's happened with Caitlin Clark, unfortunately for her, is that she has become an avatar for a lot of people's feelings about sports, about women's sports, about racial stuff and all that. And I think there's a lot of new basketball fans that aren't into the actual details like we are, like talking about the stats and like you said about the second highest scores not even picked on this. I think a lot of people that may be complaining that she's not on the team don't even realize some of this stuff you're saying.
And they may not even be basketball fans. To your point, this is actually about something else for them, because you'll see it. The thing that's interesting to me is like, we'll see people make all these societal arguments like, oh, people, they're mad at Caitlin Clark because she's white or she's straight and all this. And it's like, well, but one of the WNBA stars who a couple years came before Caitlin Clark and was amazing, Sabrina Ionescu, like she's all those things and nobody has a problem with her. And it's like, so it is this kind of like we do this in society. What I see is that I feel like for the people that engage in this behavior and use these as either as cudgels to hammer people with or to attack other parts of society, is they don't like other parts of America. Like they just don't. They and then they use any opportunity they get to just try to take it out on other parts of America. And that's what I see here, because again, it's like the things that they say about Caitlin Clark. She's not the only one of those, but she's their person, and I feel bad for her in this sense. Because it's like, man, she didn't ask to become this, this battle line in a culture war that some people want to fight. And I don't want to draw that as some kind of like, oh, there's both sides of people want to fight this. Like there are people who want to grab on this, and there's other people who are just fine watching and enjoying, or watching basketball, enjoying a thing, and they don't need this. But some people seem to need this, and they're like, I want to use this to go at other people.
Well, the example that to me sticks out, we did a show on this whenever it was 2 years ago, I think now. Remember when Brittany Griner got kidnapped by the Russian government? Yeah. If I can say it that way. And so, of course, the administration's trying to negotiate about her and Paul Whelan and all the stuff that we know about. And remember that Griner's coach got interviewed, and she was saying how the inability for the administration to get Griner released was a reflection of how the administration didn't care about gays and women and minorities. And I was like, wow. You're talking about negotiating a hostage release or swap. Not hostage, but prisoner release or swap with the Russian Federation after they invaded Ukraine, and all these high-level geopolitical stuff that I'm sure goes on behind the scenes.
That's not easy stuff. Like they're talking about, they could do it, but they're like, we're chill. Like it's like, no, are you crazy?
It's like, so hold on. So the Biden administration now, because they can't get Brittany Griner out by snapping their fingers, you now want to take it to it's a reflection of how they really feel about gays and black women. Like seriously, and that's what I mean by that was an example of Griner's situation being an avatar for someone like this coach that didn't, like we're saying, take a look at maybe prisoner swaps and all that between big nation states, especially those that are adversaries, are never easy and take a long time.
Adversaries and like Russia, arrarbitrary. Like that's not like Russia's not operating on a logical sense here. Like they were trying to get at us,
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying here is like, I think Caitlin Clark, similar to that incident with Griner, because remember, there were other people when she got released. I remember getting texts with memes from some of my friends with a picture of Paul Whelan in his military uniform saying, that he loves America and Brittany Griner hates America. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, where'd you get that from?
Because that's another area. Like, hey,
it was another. So Brittany Griner just became an avatar for however people felt already and all that. And I feel like Caitlin Clark's the same way. And I'll say this. I mean, look, to both young women, because whenever Brittany Griner spoke, it was very respectful. And she spoke about Paul Whelan and the other American, I would call hostages in Russia. Unlike the J6 hostages, I think our people in Russia are real hostages. But I'm sorry. I just had to throw that in there. And then I want to commend Caitlin Clark because she seems to be staying above the fray. She seems to be very positive. And again, what we'd like to see from young people that are successful. She seems to be a great ambassador for the sport right now. And I hope she stays that way. So,
you hope she's not corrupted by this constant need, again, by some people. And it's like, this is where you see the difference between, I think, just kind of people who can live and let live versus people who are trying to force everybody to be a certain way or to be what they think they should be. Because, and that can come from any direction. But I think we all have to be careful. The people who can live and let live have to be careful from falling into these traps. Like, everything that happens to Caitlin Clark is not some indictment on women or on women of color or the WNBA or anything like that. Like, even a week or two ago, you had sent me some stuff, and it was all over just like, oh, they're being very physical with Caitlin Clark. Is that because they don't like her, this and that? And I'm like, again, this is people, as you point out, they're not basketball fans. They don't care to be knowledgeable about this stuff because I think back on Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan used to get the crap kicked out of him when, his first, 5-6 years in the league. And to the extent the Bulls had to go get other guys to just knock the crap out of other people to try to keep them from knocking the crap out of Michael Jordan. Like, this is a sports thing, like the kind of, you're the new hot shot. The new hot shot's going to catch an elbow. Like, that's going to happen. And then you have other, like hockey, they got, the enforcers, basketball, like all this stuff. Like, this is known stuff that happens in sports. But because again, the people become these avatars and they want to see everything that happens through the lens of whatever battle they're already trying to fight. You get up in these arguments and all these discussions about things that are nonsensical in context, but who needs context when you need content?
Who needs context when you have social media?
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like, you need content, and context is harmful to content in many respects.
Context is like that's work, man. I got to look at things in context and actually
I got to know what I'm talking about. Why can't I just say that? It's all because of this. It's all because of that, and that'll get people fired up. And and then there you go. And so, but it's unfortunate. Like I said, I think it was good for you to commend Clark on her response to this stuff, and it's because it's really unfortunate for somebody, a young person like that, or like you said with Britt Griner as well, to become these avatars for all these other battles that certain people in society want to have. And it's like it doesn't have to be that way, but I guess it does in some respects because that's how it doesn't take much for someone to take it there.
Yeah, maybe the rest of us can let them play basketball. But maybe that might be too much of an ask.
They're not interested in basketball. They want to do is be mad at somebody else.
No, as I said, that's too much of an ask. So, I guess we got to turn them into avatars.
So, I think that's a good point, though, that like to commend the people who are having, and Taylor Swift, same kind of thing. Like, she had to deal with that and, kind of just kept her head forward and move forward through it. But, because there's a lot of people that are trying to bring a lot of negativity.
Sorry, man, I just can't help, as you said, Taylor Swift. What I found funny, it had nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I know we're ending, so I'm going to have my little fun. Was I would see right-wing commentators being like, well, she's not really that hot anyway. And it reminded me of like when you're in kindergarten or first grade and you got a crush on a girl and maybe you give her, like you write her a note or something and then she rejects you and you're like, well, you're ugly.
Like, I didn't like you anyway.
Like, you're just upset now and you just got to be mean. Yeah. I was like, man, these guys are like big kids. Like you're saying. Like,
that's a good point. That's a good point. Like the lack of maturity in that sense. But I think that's just like, as a society, we got to be comfortable with the fact that that's just how some people are. And the challenge is, especially with social media and the way that social media can keep us all kind of fired up the more we're on it, is to not fall towards those kind of people and to try to keep a level head about things. People who are not normally like that. People who are able to not say that everybody has to be just like me or just like I say that they should be, and not forget what I'm doing, because that's part of it as well.
All right, we got to end it because I'm going to keep going.
You're going to get crazy.
No, because I'm going to go look at the comments in our YouTube feed, and people, we're avatars for a lot of people. Makes me
only you, man. Only you. You're the avatar, man.
Nah, man.
So, but no, I think we can wrap it.
You're my partner in crime here, man. You upset a lot of people too with your presence.
Hey, man, that's how it is sometimes. But no, we appreciate everybody for joining us on this call out. Subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend, and until next time, I'm James Keys.
I'm Tunde Ogunlana.
All right, we'll talk to you next time.